Pacific, we have a problem. Our teams are disappearing. And I don't just mean the one that was removed. Okay, the orgs obviously aren't all disappearing. Sorry to give you a scare. But a lot of the players have been sent out to the market, and we don't have that much news yet on how this is all going to reassemble. So Rostermania kicked off on October 7th local time for each of the 4 big regions for VCT. And immediately we saw official announcements of teams letting players' contracts run out, letting them go out into unrestricted free agency, letting them go out to restricted free agency. I mean, things have been all sorts of crazy, but obviously a lot of it's more letting players go out and look for new teams, and we haven't quite gotten confirmation on any signings just yet. Really only a couple confirmations, right? Whether it's extensions, whether it's reaffirming that players are staying, or if it's going to be new players. But let me tell you, I mean, with the number of players that have been, again, sent out into the wilds, there are a lot of combinations available, which is, of course, what's leading to a lot of these rumors and potential leaks and reports all floating around as well. It's going to be a long off season. We'll see how long it takes for all the teams to settle down, especially because hopefully more teams are recognizing the value of grinding out the off season. But for now, it's just week 1. Let's see what we got. Now, this image, this spreadsheet, is mostly just for me to keep track of like official announcements. So I know when a team is kind of complete, when they have their starting 5, or I can tell like, oh, this team still needs, you know, like X number of players or these types of roles, things like that. So this isn't to track all the rumors and leaks and all of that. There's plenty of that information out there. I don't want to spend too much time on all of that. I am going to list rumors or reports every now and then if I think it's pretty obvious, or if it's been so widespread, or if it's been going around for so long and there's really no other option, then we'll humor it. But other than that, we're not going to list those. I mean, again, if there's things that are floating around, I'll talk about them, but I don't want to crowd the spreadsheet, so to speak. Aside from that, also, we do have a list of players, a list on the right, rather, of players, so we can track where they go, whether they stay in Pacific, whether they're going to other regions, maybe they go back to Challengers, or maybe they're retiring. Obviously, with it being the very first week of Rostermania and the transfer windows being open, there isn't a lot of new signings to talk about. There's just a lot of players looking for teams, as you can see. A lot of red. Like a lot. I mean, like a whole team's worth down here. Like there's a lot going on. Let's just talk about kind of the big notes. Obviously, Gen G, 3 players released. Just so we're very clear, they weren't released as in their contracts were terminated early. They were released because their contracts ran out and they didn't extend their contract. That's what it means. They didn't extend it, right? Whether there was even a chance to extend or not, we don't know. But they could also very well re-sign with Gen G. Gen G has done this in the past, and I think it's fine, right? Some people are like, oh, like Gen G is like baiting for interactions, but it's also like, I mean, if their contract officially ended and you're still negotiating a new contract, they're still technically like free to go, right? Until, you know, pen to paper, they could find a new team. So, you know, keeping it official, I think that's fair game. So their contracts ended. These 3 were looking for teams. Munchkin supposedly was only a free agent for 9 hours. So who knows? That leads us to speculate that he would probably rejoin Gen G, because it sounds very hard to figure out a new contract within 9 hours. Obviously, sure, they could have been talking before. But again, I mean, there's such a wide range of things that can happen, right? Either they need to find 3 new players, including an IGL. Either, you know, it's just 2 players. Maybe it's none of them. Who knows? Who knows what's going to result here? It's actually the range is so wide that it's hard to even speculate like who would be a good fit. Because Texture and Charon are really, really big pillars of Gen G's 2024 success. But also, I think some of these other parts are going to matter so much more. For instance, right now, Gen G doesn't have an initiator, officially speaking, right? So initiators matter a lot, especially if you want your star duelist to shine. You don't have an IGL or a dedicated IGL. So that is going to matter a lot, again, for someone like your star duelist to shine. So there's a lot of questions. And then there's the question of, like, are you bringing in veterans? Are you bringing in rookies? What's the balance look like there? So big question marks. However, if you're a Gen G fan, I would say just have faith in the fact that Coach HSK was re-signed, or he extended his contract, right? So he's sticking around, and he was the one who put this roster together for 2024. He was the one who saw the magic in this combination and brought on Charon, right? I mean, sure, Solo said he had his eyes on Charon before. He noticed him before as well. But it was HSK who like put this all together before Solo joined Gen G. So I would just say that there is reason to keep faith in Coach HSK to help find the magic again with whatever combination of players. So let's wait and see. But Texture did officially extend his contract, so I think that's good news for Gen G fans. PRX, not too much to talk about. Obviously, Coach Bulb leaving was a while back, right after Champions ended and the season ended. So it's been a little while, but since this is our very first week of Rostermania, we're just listing that as recent news here. Eventually, we'll move them over to the released player and coach list. But outside of that, I mean, no news, right? The only thing I noticed was Alex's contract ends in 2024, according to the global contract database. The Pacific one doesn't list what month. So, I mean, who knows? But I'm not trying to scare anybody. I'm just saying that's the fact that's out there. Could be renegotiating, could be just waiting to sign the extension. Like, who knows? Who knows what's out there? But I don't see strong reason to believe that he would be leaving. But we'll just have to wait and see. But either way, I expect some news, whether it's extension, re-signing, or something else, right? Surely, PRX has been pretty good about officially announcing extensions and re-signings. So if that happens, I assume we'll see it. So just don't freak out. I'm just saying that that's probably something we can look forward to. But in terms of the players, listen, I know there's a lot of talk about PRX rosters. I've talked about it before. I wouldn't be surprised either way. I'm not surprised if they also, if they stick to this starting five. I'm not surprised if they add in, an extra player and see how else they can make it work. I mean, we've heard talks of Alex talking about how they were considering Premi before. So obviously the option has been there. It's not like hard set in stone that it's only these five ever playing for PRX. Moving on to DRX, Buzz has been released from DRX. His contract was ending this year. It has ended and he has now been released from DRX. He said he is looking for team, and there are rumors of him joining T1. I'm just going to say I'm going to be very torn if that happens. I have nothing against T1 as an organization. I've just been burned by their Valorant team a little too hard the past 2 years. And also with Stacks joining them, and it's seeming more and more likely that he will be the IGL once again, even though he switched teams. I'm not that excited about that prospect. Like, I'm not a big fan of that choice and change. But if Buzz goes, he is probably my favorite duelist and entry player in Pacific. So I'd be a little torn. Listen, I think there's good logic for why people would assume that Buzz would join T1, right? Stacks is there. It's a Korean org. It's a very storied and, the most reputable Korean esports org ever. So, listen, there's all the reason for Buzz to join. Yes, I get that. But I'm just going to be a little torn. But those are still rumors. Who knows where Buzz is going to go, but he is out of DRX, which does mean it's basically kind of a big end of an era, right? I mean, Mako kind of the only one now remaining of what we would call the core DRX or the core Vision Strikers, although even Buzz and Mako were not part of the OG squad, right? So it's already basically a whole new generation. But then on top of that, I think to me the bigger news, because I think the ones who have been paying attention, you kind of saw Buzz leaving DRX coming just because he didn't extend his contract while a bunch of the other players did. But then Foxy9 and Bane have recently been announced as restricted free agents. So they're still contracted with DRX, but they are allowed to look for new opportunities. Some people are surprised about this. I'm personally not that surprised. And I say this as someone who was a big Bane believer and supporter. I was very excited for Bane to get a shot, and I think he actually proved to be very, very good value for DRX in 2024 after he joined. However, you cannot deny that his actual objective performance was not consistently high enough, right? Yes, like vibes, etc., comms, like these are all intangibles that you should consider. It can't just be stats. But I would also say that even from a third-person perspective, right, even from the outside, there were games where I could see that Bane couldn't get his head in the game, right, because he wasn't doing well or something wasn't working out or he couldn't figure out the solution. Like, it didn't seem like a case of, okay, your kills are bad, but clearly you're the guy who's like the glue keeping this team together. Like, it wasn't always like that. And then Foxy9 also, some great games this year compared to the past. I would say he's definitely improved, but also not to the point where I'm like, oh, this guy has proven the potential time and over, right? These are players where I'd be like, okay, listen, if you want to invest in a roster and players long term and you see the potential, I mean, I saw enough to be like, okay, if you see more, that's cool. Like, you know, I think they've improved from the past. So, okay, maybe you see something else I don't. I'd be willing to think that way. But also, these are two players where I'd be like, okay, but if you think you really need to make a big jump, they haven't. Listen, flashback, another rookie comes in and he's like, his highlights, the stats that he has, the way he plays is very, very consistent, right? I think that's just a clear comparison. And also with the number of rookies and potential free agents floating around, I don't think there's any strong reason to have to keep them. Let's put it that way. I'm not saying you absolutely should be looking for players to replace them with, but also I'm not surprised. There are rumors about, you know, whether it's an academy player being called up, whether it's young rookie stars like Hyunmin being brought over. There are rumors of that. All the rumors basically are of players that are very cracked. Oh, actually, one big rumor is freeing from old D plus Kia, and then he played briefly on Rare Adam during Ascension. Him being an option, and I think freeing is really, really, really good. I think he's very good. I mean, he's one of the biggest reasons D plus Kia was even a contender to go back to Ascension this year. So I think freeing's very good. Hopefully we do get to see him at a bigger stage. That would be exciting. Whether it's with DRX or not, we would have to wait and see. Talon, no news. I don't think any reason to believe news would be coming out. To me, it feels like Primi was their offseason move, just done early, right? So I don't really see any big reason. Boy has been released from the team, so he's not sticking around on part of the coaching staff. I wonder if that means Frost is going to bring someone else in. I think Frost is pretty big on, you know, knowing the value of assistant coaches and strategic coaches, things like that. I mean, he's one of the big advocates for Anders, right, and things like that. So do we see someone else joining, you know, whether it's remote or coming over to Pacific? Maybe, hopefully, but for now, I don't expect any player changes to be happening here with Talon. Oh, also, I realized Patty Pan was still signed under Talon, but he was basically inactive the whole year. But he is no longer contracted with Talon either. But I didn't list him there because he wasn't active for the year. RRQ. Elmi Moore was a restricted free agent and then recently now an unrestricted free agent released from RRQ. His contract not extended or re-signed. And this was another one where I think a lot of people were caught off guard just a bit. And while I'm not going to say I expected it, but I'm not surprised. Elmi Moore was one of those players, I think, both last year and this year, where his highs were high, but his lows were low. And then he was fairly consistently a slow starter, which I think you're now realizing that if that is a character trait, it hurts you a lot. I mean, the year is grueling. And if the match just ends too early for you, like, you know, one too many times, it's over. And I think that's a rough one. I think Elmi Moore was also one of the players that did overextend a bit too much when he didn't need to. Again, his mechanical highs are high, so I think there is a world where Elmi Moore could grow even more as a player, and we come back and we see even more potential. But I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, okay, if you're a team that wants to play, that wants to have very strong interpretations of the meta or the ante, and you have strict plans that you are building around that, which I think is the pattern that we've seen from RRQ, especially this year, you can't have players like that. Like, that's just not going to win you a trophy, right? It can be good enough. I mean, listen, RRQ was very close, right? They were very close to making it to one step higher each part of 2024. But you're also consistently very, very close, which means that something needed to happen for you to take another leap. And so it's unfortunate. I really liked Elmi Moore. Hopefully he lands on his feet. I would love to see him, kind of get a refresher. I think that would be good for him as well. But no longer with RRQ. But the rest of them, again, no reason to believe that there's going to be any big changes. I mean, obviously, Monyet just joined. Jemkin was signed on for, I believe, 2 years. Xfero, I think, extended his contract in the middle of the year. I can't remember. And I think those are all very solid. Like, Xfero looked a lot more comfortable on Sentinel, actually. I would argue that he started to get a bit more passive when they weren't winning. I will say that, where he wasn't getting as aggressive or confident with his lurks or, how he creates space on the other side of the map or the middle of the map, things like that. Yes, I think there's some consideration to be had here, but overall, I think Xfer over to Sentinel was pretty good, and that also gives you someone who's very, very flexible as well, since he's been hopping around Controller, Initiator, and now Sentinel as well. So that's all very good. Coach Ewok, they announced, was sticking around further, so that's official, so that's good. I think Ewok's been doing a great job. I mean, the RRQ definitely has been improving since the start of 2023, so there's reason to have faith there. Vox Eyes left the team after the season, so that's been a little while, but again, it's week 1, so we'll just put that in there. But they did announce that they are looking for an assistant coach. They've been looking for an assistant coach, so I think that's actually pretty big. Like Ewok, again, Vox Eyes was an analyst for the team, but I think there are some big differences. Again, it's case by case, but between what a coach does and an analyst does. I think an analyst is much more specific. It's also much more data driven. It's a lot more about reporting on ideas, right, or observations. Whereas, the coach is like, you're doing a lot of things both in and out of the game. So I think this is going to be something that we'll have to keep an eye on. I would love to see what Ewok is able to do when he finds someone, hopefully, that he has faith in and has good chemistry with, and see if that can really further the team. Because I do think that's one of the things that was kind of keeping them back. I mean, somewhat similar to a lot of the thoughts that a lot of fans have about PRX, or did before, and then Bulb joined, and we saw, things were at least a lot calmer for PRX and Alex. So I think it's a similar story for Ewok. So I'm very curious. So let's stay tuned for the assistant coach announcement. We'll see what it is. The rumors are that they are going to be getting Kush and Warbirds as an assistant coach, which I think would be pretty cool, because Warbirds was, of course, another big part of the anti that Team Secret used to be so good at. And so that could be, that's a pretty big part of the game off of your shoulders. So I would be very excited. I really liked having Warbirds around and hearing his thoughts. So it'd be great to have him back in Pacific. That'd be cool. But again, those are just rumors for now. And then Kush, listen, I'm going to be very honest. I haven't followed his games too much. I know that he's been one of the players that is consistently brought up within the Indonesian scene. So, I mean, he's been playing for a long time as well. So there's that. But I don't have too much to say yet. If it becomes official, we'll deep dive into it a bit further. Team Secret, no news. They're baiting a little bit. They're teasing things. Let's wait and see. I'm not willing to bite just yet. And then T1. This is a biggie. T1's a pretty biggie. So things that have happened with T1. First of all, the CEO of T1, Joe Marsh, he explained in an interview that they are in fact going for full Korean roster. So that's something that we're all kind of basing our assumptions off of. Autumn's contract was reported to have been extended on the global contract database in the middle of the year into next year, so 2025. And then they announced that they are bringing back Chungak, who was a coach for T1 last year and then left this year, now is back, went to Wolves in the middle of the year into China, VCT China. And then they're bringing in Indigo, who is a coach for Nongshim Red Force under head coach PR. I'm going to be honest, I don't know much specifically about what Chungak did last year, but obviously he was with the team last year, so he's coming back. So, okay, that's cool. I don't know too much about the exact dividing of roles between Indigo and PR when he was on Nongshim, but I will say I didn't see anything that gave me a lot of faith towards the Nongshim Red Force coaching staff, right? There seemed to be some stubbornness about the ideas they had, and I feel like with the talent that we saw from the players, like so much more could have been done if the coaches were, people that I was going to look at and be like, these guys could go anywhere, right? So I'm not saying that they're bad, because a lot of times, like with coaching, we don't know what else is going on, right? We don't know what they've maybe tried. Maybe there's other things. There's a number of reasons why the coaches may have more potential and we just never see it. So I'm not going to go ahead and say that I think they haven't done much or whatever. But at the very least, while I was a big fan of Nongshim Red Force and I wanted that team to do well, I didn't see anything from the outside that shouted, the coaches are friggin' sick on this team. Listen, at the very least, Indigo has the experience, right? And Nongshim Red Force did do quite well. They looked quite shaky, but they still went all the way and pushed Simprisa Gaming all the way to a map 5 and almost won it as well, just similar to Boom Esports in the grand finals of Challengers Korea. So hopefully that experience counts for a lot as this coaching trio unites here for 2025 for T1. Outside of that, Stacks obviously joined in the middle of the year. I can't imagine that that's going to change much. It seems like they are willing to stick around with Izu. Autumn's always spoken very highly of Izu as well. Saya player was restricted and now has been released from T1, so an unrestricted free agent. Rossi, same thing, but he has now actually been confirmed for C9, so that's all said and done. So I'm excited to see Rossi land on another team as well, because I think he did a lot for T1 in the beginning of the year, so I'm excited for that. Curious about where Saya is going to go. I imagine that he'll still find a spot. I think Saya is another one of those players where a little bit more flexibility and not just agents, but how he plays would be very, very good for him, because he's very op heavy. So we'll see. We'll see how that works out. But aside from that, they had teased, and now by the time this video was recorded, officially announced that Sylvan has joined. I would have been super excited about this if it was the beginning of the year. I would have. I think Sylvan wasn't given a proper shot last year on Gen G. He was playing an off role. He was playing mostly initiators. He used to be a controller, and he wasn't even playing, every single game. I just think it wasn't a good look, right? I think it was a bit of a miss for him in his career. But if you watched him in challengers before VCT Pacific, you would have been excited about this player. Like, he was the guy that everyone was like, okay, after Mako, it's probably Sylvan, right? When Zimba having gone to the military, it's like, okay, like Sylvan's the other controller that you should be looking at if you're in Korea. So I'm going to assume he's going to be playing controller here. I actually didn't watch the announcement video. Maybe I should have. So I'm going to assume he's going to be playing controller here. I'm still going to be excited. I'm just not as hyped as I would have been. But if you are relatively newer to the Korean scene and you're just looking at what happened last year, I would say try to keep an open mind about Sylvan, because I think he was a very smart player, and I think he was a pretty consistent player as a controller. So I want to see him do well, and I think he's capable of doing so. So I'm a little hopeful. I'm getting a little scared because T1 has... Like, T1's becoming a list of players that I really, really like, and I really want to see them succeed. And in fact, like, the conversations I've had with Autumn were all great too. Like, I've just been burned by their results, right? They've been so shaky both last year and this year, and both years I had so much hope for them. So it just hurts. It just hurts. But hey, maybe now's the time. Third time's the charm. Maybe. I'm still not sold on Stacks IGLing. It's not that I think Stacks is necessarily a bad IGL. I just don't know if that's the most value he brings, but I guess you work with what you got. It should also be noted that Carpe's contract is listed in the database to end in 24. Now, just like Alex, that doesn't mean anything yet. It just means that they have to do something officially, whether it's an extension, a re-signing, or a release of the player. So who knows what that's going to happen, but listen, I wouldn't be surprised if they're revamping even Carpe's position, but also he's been so core to their activities this year, whether it's the games, whether it's the like fan meets, whether it's content. So that tells me that he's probably sticking around, but we will have to wait and see. But I would say that's another one where it's like, expect some type of news, right? That's official. Assuming that Carpe stays, that does mean that we technically have 5 players. Except they said they were going full Korean. So did they mean just like full Korean comms? Like, is Xcurit still grinding away his Korean lessons? I think that's the big question we all have, is where is Xcurit? Like, what's happening with Xcurit? Like, he's still listed with this team. He is not officially a free agent. What's going on here, right? That's my big question. Honestly, let's say it's this 5. Sylvan plays controller. Xcurit gets to go back to Sentinel. I'm actually okay with that in terms of roles. Like, I think the roles actually work out pretty well there, right? But I mean, I don't know. The whole thing of like emphasizing that they're going to go full Korean roster, and then they just meant that Xcurit's really, really picked up his Korean lessons. I'm not quite sure. I would love to see Xcurit be given more time to see how much he can do in Valorant. I do agree. I think jumping into T1 and VCT Pacific in his like first official year of playing professional Valorant was him basically getting thrown way in the deep end, and I don't think it was really good for either him or T1, quite frankly, for the year. But I would also like to see him, because I think he can definitely do more. I don't know how much more, but I think he can do more. So we'll see. But no news yet. Zeta division, big changes. Laz has retired. Euron and Huron, the 2 rookies that they brought in, basically called up, right? Because Huron used to be part of the academy before as well. Now restricted free agents. looking for big changes. Depp and Sugar Zero are sticking around. Depp, obviously, no complaints, no surprises. Sugar Zero, I'm gonna be honest, I don't know if he's really impressed enough, both last and this year, to be someone where I'm like, I really want to see them, go at it again with him. But also, it's not like it's someone where I'm like, oh, well, like, I hate to be cold, but he was the one who was weighing them down. Like, I don't think that's true either. Could be a world where Sugar Zero, they're looking at him to be the IGL again, because he IGL'd for a little bit last year, I believe, right? Maybe it was beginning of this year. It's all blurring together. So, not sure what's going to happen there. But there have been rumors about who they're picking up. The big name there being ZETA, also CLZ as an IGL, so maybe Sugar Zero is not IGLing. I'm just kind of putting ideas out there. And then, of course, the big mystery about what's happening with Ospas has resurfaced, with Carlisle officially having been either extended or re-signed with the team. So, listen, I don't think that's happening. But I do think it'd be pretty cool. I don't know if it's happening. I don't think it's happening. But I think the rookies on Riddle Order proved to the rest of the world how much more promising the upcoming Japanese talent can be. I think the pipeline's still a little messy. I don't think it's very well systemized. And I still don't think there's enough good guidance in the Japanese challenger scene for these players to really grow to full their potential before they join a VCT Pacific team. But, whether it's the Riddle guys, whether it's players like ZETA, I think it's going to be exciting. It's going to be a new era for ZETA Division. In terms of Huron and Huron, I do just want to mention, I do think this was it was a bit of an unfair year for Huron, because he was playing an off role for the whole year. And then they finally was like, okay, fine, play what you like, play Sentinel. And then he looked really solid. Not like oh wow, he might have been the rookie of the year, not that level, but like, oh, like this looks a lot better. Like, he just looks comfy, he's confident, he's hitting the shots. So I mean, just from a human to human perspective, I would love to see Huron be given another chance somewhere. Huron, I'm gonna be honest, if he does have the potential, I think it was a matter of he was also maybe just brought up way too early, right? He just hadn't matured enough yet as a player. So we'll see. Maybe Huron, gets to grind it out in challengers a little bit, and he comes back even stronger. That'd be a cool storyline. But objectively speaking, not much is going to be missed, I'll be honest. But with Huron, I think I would love to see him be given a shot somewhere, even if it's in Challengers Japan, where he can kind of be like, no, this is what I'm good at, and maybe he can try to prove himself once more. Global Esports did something very interesting, where they said immediately after the season ended that they are allowing all of their players to look for opportunities while they are still under contract. So all of them were restricted free agents right off the bat. Now, some of them are unrestricted free agents, right? Benkai and Lightning Fast just announced that they are now officially unrestricted free agents, so they're free to look for whatever teams they want with whatever new deals. But the rest are still restricted free agents. But basically, Global Esports was like, yo, you guys want to go find new opportunities? Do it. We're also going to find new opportunities, potentially. So this is a very big revamp. Also, okay, so like Spin is technically listed as still being under contract with GE. They never announced that he was released or anything like that. So this one's a weird one, because he said he's resigning as head coach, which, I mean, that was rough to see. But I think it's also, I think it was a very respectable move as a head coach of just saying like, hey, whatever excuses we all want to make about ourselves or the environment or the circumstances or whatever, at the end of the day, like, this is why coaches often become scapegoats as well, because at the end of the day, the easiest argument is, and part of it is always going to be true, a small part of it is always going to be true, is that, okay, well, the leadership like has to be responsible. It's the same in a company, it's the same in whatever organization. Like, the leader always has to hold some sort of responsibility. So it was kind of heartbreaking to see him put that out himself, but Spin did resign as head coach. Now, I wonder if they're just working with him to take on like a different role. I'm not really sure what's going on here, but he did also help out with Apex. So like, I actually just assumed that his contract was over, like either terminated or whatever, but like on the database, he is still listed. So it's a little weird, but I don't know. I assume either the database will be updated or they'll put out an official announcement. Big time though, was released from the team, no longer on the contract database. He was out there in the market. And then Big Time also helped with Revenant Esports at Ascension. So already got, at least a short-time gig. We'll see where they land up. I mean, we'll see. Also, just because it just kind of felt like they were a duo, right? So I'm curious to see where both of them land up and what more they're able to do as coaches. But yeah, I mean, listen, the rumors for GE are wild. Like just because nobody is confirmed. So they could get an entirely new team. They could get only like one new player, two new players. Like, I don't even know. The rumors are insane for this team. Like, literally, if I combine all the rumors I've ever heard, like, the entire world is trying out for GE right now. And they did put out an open call for tryouts. So for trials. So the entire world is trialing for GE, and they're like considering the entire world. So I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you. The only thing is there have been rumors of Juvenile, who was the assistant coach for Leviathan, joining GE. Once the transfer window opened, he tweeted out that he's flying to Korea with emojis. So, like, okay, it all seems to make sense. I don't know. It hasn't been confirmed yet, so I'm just going to leave it there, but it seems very likely. Speaking of big changes, DFM, also very big changes. I think the most shocking thing from this, or I think the thing that I surprised most people, was the fact that, oh, they actually bit the bullet and they broke apart the Crazy Raccoon core. So Neth, Medusa, and Astel actually have been released, but May is sticking around as the star duelist. Anthem was also released, which that was a bit of a head scratcher for me, just because it was like IGLs are not common in the Japanese scene. And while he's not like an IGL that I think is world class, at least he gets the job done a little bit. But yes, he was also one of those players that gets pretty shaky, and you just can't have that in any type of role anymore. So the only ones remaining are May and Cess, but Cess's contract also says it ends in 24. But he hasn't been a restricted free agent yet, so I'm not sure. Again, that's just one where we're like, well, we'll expect some type of announcement. Head coach Astel being let go, or, at least not re-signing with the team, was an interesting one for me. Just because I feel like, again, we don't know exactly what the division is of all the work and the roles between the coaches, but it did seem like he made some good big changes. But also, obviously, the results were a bit disappointing, especially in lieu of their first victory, right? The first victory seemed so good, and then they never quite played like that again. So kind of sad to see, just because also, right, like Astel is one of the youngest coaches that we had in Pacific, used to be a player in Valorant. So one of the more recent kind of shifts to coaching. So I'm sure it wasn't easy, but we'll see. We'll see if he continues as a coach somewhere else. I'm not quite sure. May sticking around is no big surprise, but there's a lot of work to be done here too. I don't think there's too much point in speculating. There are some rumors out there. Personally, I would love to see the Riddle Order guys get given a chance on either ZETA or DFM, but also maybe Riddle just wants to keep him around, and they're willing to pay him to keep him around to run it back, which could also be cool. I just think that all three of them showed a lot of promise, both in Challengers and Ascension. So hopefully. But the rumors speak to a different direction, right? The rumors speak to other players that were playing in Challenger Japan. Also pretty good players, but personally, I was actually quite impressed with the rookies that were on Riddle Order. So we'll have to wait and see. But hey, I think the good news is they're making big changes. So, all right, they understand. SPG, no news. Thank goodness. Hopefully, I never have to change this part of the spreadsheet. Hopefully, never, ever. Except for maybe an assistant coach. I just want to say this again. A lot of people were freaking out that they let go of assistant coach or strategic coach. I forget his official title. Sungmin. That was there for Ascension. He was originally, they announced him as a short-term contract specifically for Ascension. So it's not like they won Ascension and they were like, all right, peace out, dude. We're actually just going to kick you out. No, it was like literally he was only there for that event. It could be a matter of he maybe already had an agreement to go back to SLT Songnam, or maybe they're, potentially negotiating a longer-term contract. Maybe SPG for whatever reason doesn't want an assistant coach. I don't know, but I'm just saying, like, it's not like people. There was a small part of the community that had like question marks flying all over because they were like, "Wow, you let go of this guy? Like, I thought this guy was a pretty important part of the win." I think he was. I would argue that he was, and I think Silk Cannon's a great coach too. Listen, I think so, but also I don't think it was an easy tournament to win, especially in the grand finals. And I would argue, I like to argue that someone was a big part of that. He might come back. Again, it was just meant to be a short-term contract, so that's not news to me. But the rest, very good. Hopefully it stays that way. Please don't pick them apart. Please, 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 please don't. Please don't make any big changes. This is a good team. Just let's see what they can do. Thank you. Boom Esports made some changes. So they released Zespu and head coach Meow. Meow had been with them for a while, so this is a bit shocking, to be honest. But let's look at this from a bigger picture. Boom actually wasn't supposed to be in VCT Pacific. It doesn't matter how close it was. At the end of the day, you had a tournament you needed to win, and you couldn't. You couldn't. And also, objectively speaking, everybody in the world agreed that they did not look like they were in a position to win. I mean, you might have hoped, but the objective facts were that they absolutely looked like the weaker team in terms of pure play and skill and results at Ascension. Okay, so that's one thing. And then now you are an Ascended team, so you kind of have to prove yourself every year to keep your spot. But that also, if you spin it the other way, means you have a chance every year to stay in VCT Pacific, play at the biggest stages, get a team capsule, have a chance to go to champions every year. Like, you know what I mean? There's a lot of incentives here. So, listen, I'm just saying, while I was surprised, also once I took a step back and I was like, okay, like, you're now in a position, I mean, everyone, but especially the Ascendant teams, you guys are now in positions where you absolutely have to, like, throw everything you have every year to be the absolute best you can be, with the hopes that then all the benefits you get from it would, be a good ROI. Then, maybe not keeping the head coach that wasn't quite able to break through, maybe that starts to make sense a little bit. I don't know. I mean, obviously, Mao has a wealth of experience under his belt. He's also multilingual, so I wouldn't be surprised if he lands somewhere else. In fact, I think it'd be interesting to see what he can do with another team. But while I was shocked, once I took a little bit of time, I was like, okay, I mean, I get it. Now, whether they make an upgrade or a downgrade or a side grade, that awaits to be seen. When it comes to Zespi, I hate to say it, but I'm not surprised. I'm not. Now, only the team can really know how much his vibes were a big contributor to the team, because I do think it was a contributor for sure. I think he definitely kept the team. He was part of the reason the team was able to kind of stick it all the way through. And it's not that Zespi was like an absolute weak part of the team, but I would say in terms of showing promise, Zespi wasn't at the top of the list. That's for sure. So again, I think this is more just a matter of like, this is just the brutal reality of being an Ascended team, where you can't just be like, hey, well, let's give it like, we expect you to grow, and then we can like grow more the next year to win. Like, you just don't have that time as an Ascended team. You just have to win all the time if you want to stick around in VCT Pacific and not have to risk going through Ascension again. Because I mean, who knows what's going to happen then, especially with Challengers teams coming up stronger and stronger. So I think Zespi is more a situation of like, damn, this is just the cold, harsh reality of an Ascended team. I think it really, really sucks for Zespi and Meow, but also, again, I'm not trying to rub it into Boom Esports fans, but the brutal honesty is you weren't supposed to be here. So I think brutal changes make a lot more sense for Boom, let's say, compared to SPG, right? If SPG made those changes, it'd be like, wow, like, those guys earned you that spot and they looked good doing it, and you're gonna risk making changes now. But it's like, okay, with Boom, again, you were close but no cigar. So now you gotta make a jump. Do they make more changes on that? I don't know. Actually, I mean, I guess they can technically make one more change. I don't know if the rules, I assume the same rules still apply here, where I think you need to keep 3 out of the 5 players, but we'll see. Who they get is a different question. Elmi Moore is an Indonesian player that is available. He's out there. But outside of that, who knows? Who knows what's going to happen with Boom Esports? But yeah, that's week 1. So it's a lot of like my opinions on speculating. Obviously, I mean, some teams it's hard to speculate because there's so many slots open. This is all, the dust is going to settle, I think, pretty quickly, actually, especially with a lot of off-season events coming up. Like, I think teams have realized, like, we got to make use of these off-season events. It's good branding, it's good marketing, and it's great practice, as we've seen. So hopefully we're going to start to see the dust settle earlier rather than later. But one thing is for sure. It's going to be a very exciting offseason for Pacific. I am very curious. I kind of hope that we see a lot of newer names as well, just because I think it'd be interesting. I think we're right at the entrance of a big the first generational shift within pro Valorant, right? And it makes sense, 4 years in, and it sounds like it's right about the time where we get like first gen pros versus now second gen pros fully like coming into the system. So I am curious. We'll have to wait and see. Lots of question marks. I mean, let me know down in the comments below what you think is going to be the biggest move of Pacific. Like, what is the biggest move in Pacific? And also, what was the most shocking out of all the player releases so far? That's going to be it for this week. Of course, if you like the video, please leave a like and make sure to subscribe to the channel. And we will return next week with hopefully more groundbreaking news. See you then.